All right, let's jump right into this. If you're in the market for a top-tier smartphone right now, you are staring down the barrel of one of the most classic $1,000 dilemmas in tech history. Are you going with Samsung or are you going with Apple? Welcome to this explainer, where we're taking a completely impartial, heavily data-driven look at the ultimate smartphone heavyweight matchup. Today, we're pitting the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra directly against the Apple iPhone 17 Pro Max. We are looking strictly at the facts, the rigorous lab tests, and the real-world specs, so you know exactly what you're getting when you invest your hard-earned cash into these premium devices. So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the ultimate flagship Showdown. Then we'll move into design and display, followed by power and endurance. After that, it's time for the camera shootout, and finally, we'll wrap things up with a final verdict. Section 1. The ultimate flagship Showdown. Section 2. Design and display. Okay, look, we're talking about dropping well over $1,000 on a device that you're literally going to hold in your hand every single day for years. So the stakes are pretty high here. Both of these companies have packed their absolute best engineering into these glass and metal slabs, but honestly, they took completely different paths to get there. And this physical build completely dictates how the phone feels in everyday life. On the Samsung side, they've prioritized this sleek, remarkably thin 7.9mm profile. It's noticeably lighter at 214 grams, and it still somehow manages to house a built-in S Pen. Apple, on the other hand, went a different route. The iPhone is slightly thicker at 8.8mm and heavier at 233 grams. But that extra heft, combined with its aluminum build, gives it a very solid, distinct, and premium feel. It really just comes down to your personal vibe. Do you want the comfortable lightness and utility of Samsung or the hefty, dense, premium feel of Apple? And that difference really shines, pun intended, when we turn those screens on. Both of these give you massive 6.9-inch LTPO OLED panels. That means incredible color, great efficiency, and a buttery smooth 120Hz refresh rate. They can both hit blindingly high peak brightness numbers in direct sunlight, nearly 3,000 nits. But when we measure the everyday max brightness, the Galaxy S26 Ultra pulls ahead at roughly 1480 nits compared to the iPhone's 1000. Throw in Samsung's slightly higher pixel density, we're talking about 500 pixels per inch versus Apple's 460, and you've got a Samsung display that takes a slight but noticeable edge in everyday sharpness and brightness. But wait, Samsung brings an extra, really clever trick to the display category, and it's called privacy display. Think about how this applies to your real life for a second. Imagine you're reading a highly sensitive work email or a private text on a packed subway, or shoulder to shoulder in a busy coffee shop. This feature actually narrows the viewing angle of your screen on demand, so the person sitting right next to you just sees a dark screen, while you see everything perfectly. It's a seriously practical, built-in feature for anybody spending time in public spaces. Section 3. Power and endurance. All right, moving from the surface down into the engine room. If you were to just look at the raw specs here, you'd probably think the endurance test was an open and shut case. Samsung comes out swinging with a larger raw battery capacity, a flat 5,000 milliamp hours. Apple, meanwhile, equips the iPhone with a slightly smaller 4823 milliamp hour battery. So based purely on physical capacity, you'd absolutely expect the Galaxy to outlast the iPhone, right? Well, here is our first major plot twist. Hardware size isn't everything. It's all about how efficiently the software and chipset actually use that power. Despite having the smaller battery, the iPhone actually posts a higher overall active use score. It lasts roughly 17 hours and 58 minutes in active testing that outlasts the Galaxy's 16 hours and 23 minutes by over an hour and a half. The data shows the iPhone is particularly excellent for web browsing and gaming, while the Galaxy holds its ground a bit better if you're doing a ton of call time or video streaming. However, Samsung pulls off a massive redemption arc when it's time to actually plug back in. 43. That is the number of minutes it takes the Galaxy S26 Ultra to go from 0 to a full 100% charge. Thanks to its 60-watt wired charging capability, it literally leaves the iPhone in the dust. To put that into perspective for you, while your Samsung is fully juiced up and ready to walk out the door in 43 minutes, the iPhone takes about 72 minutes to get that same job done. Now, let's talk long-term, because endurance isn't just about battery life for one day. It's about the lifespan of the phone itself. 7 years. That is Samsung's promise for operating system updates. Apple has long been the undisputed king of supporting older phones, but officially they are promising 5 years of updates for this current generation. So if you're the type of person who buys a phone and holds onto it until the wheels fall off, Samsung is offering a longer officially supported lifespan. Keep in mind, both devices are rocking cutting-edge 3nm chipsets, so honestly, they'll both easily crush anything you throw at them for the better part of a decade.
Section 4. The camera shootout.
Okay, there is a totally staggering difference in the raw numbers on the main lens here. We're looking at a massive 200 megapixels on the Samsung versus 48 megapixels on the iPhone. But what does that actually mean for you? Well, in broad daylight, both of them are going to produce absolutely stunning top-tier photos. The real differences start to pop up in specific scenarios. Like once the sun goes down, both are great, but Samsung pulls ahead specifically when you're using the telephoto zoom in night mode. And for selfies, Samsung is super impressive at rendering fine details, like facial hair, whereas the iPhone rocks a wider 20mm lens, which is fantastic if you're trying to capture more of the background or cram more friends into a group shot. Shifting over to video, both of these devices are just absolute powerhouses. They both shoot 4K at 60 frames per second flawlessly, but they do excel in slightly different ways. Apple keeps its long-held slight edge in overall video quality. If you're shooting loud concert footage or zooming in while you film, the iPhone is going to give you sharper, more contrast-rich footage, and it has standard Dolby Vision support out of the box. But on the Samsung side, you get something Apple simply does not offer: 8K video capture at 30 frames per second. If you need that massive resolution so you can aggressively crop your video in post-production, Samsung is literally your only choice here. Of course, video is really only half the experience, right? We've got to talk about audio. Both of these phones get incredibly loud, but the tuning is very different. The iPhone speakers lean toward a much warmer sound profile with pretty pronounced bass, and it does that without muddying up the vocals, which is tough to pull off. Interestingly, though, the Samsung actually measures slightly better on paper in rigorous lab tests, pulling down a very good rating. But hey, audio is super subjective. A lot of listeners will probably find they prefer the warm, bass-heavy signature of the iPhone when they're watching movies or kicking back with a podcast.
Section 5. The final verdict.
All right, it is time to bring this explainer to its climax and talk about everyone's favorite topic, price. And the crazy curveball here is that the value equation actually shifts completely depending on where you happen to live. If you're watching this in the United States, the iPhone 17 Pro Max is the more expensive device. It sits at roughly $1,169. Meanwhile, the Galaxy S26 Ultra is almost $100 cheaper, coming in at $977. But if you are in Europe, the entire situation flips upside down. The Galaxy S26 Ultra runs anywhere from 150 to 200 euros cheaper than the iPhone. So for European buyers, Samsung is handing you a massive financial advantage right out of the gate. So let's break this all down into the ultimate cheat sheet. You should absolutely choose the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra if you prioritize having a lighter, slightly thinner phone in your pocket. It's the clear winner if you want a remarkably bright screen armed with that super clever privacy display feature. It completely dominates when it comes to wired charging speed, cutting your time tethered to the wall almost in half. Plus, it gives you the unique productivity of the S Pen, that longer 7-year promise for software updates and finer detail retention on your selfies. On the flip side, you should grab the iPhone 17 Pro Max if unmatched endurance is your absolute top priority. Despite the smaller battery, remember, it's giving you over an hour and a half more of active use time. It also brings the incredible convenience of built-in MagSafe magnetic wireless charging, no special cases required. It delivers that warmer, bass-rich audio, slightly stronger, and more contrast-rich video recording, and of course, the renowned stability and high resale value of the broader iOS ecosystem. At the end of the day, both of these devices are the absolute pinnacle of their respective platforms. The data clearly shows they trade blows pretty evenly across design, power, and cameras. Which brings us to a final thought-provoking question for you. If you are already deeply invested in iCloud, iMessage, and Apple Watches, or conversely, if your whole digital life is built around Windows integration, Google services, and Samsung wearables, is a slight edge in charging speed or a bit more battery life really worth jumping ship and abandoning your ecosystem? Think about how these specific data points actually fit into your daily life, and the right choice is going to be crystal clear. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will catch you on the next one.